After being held at gunpoint and forced to repurchase tables for Pinball FX, it's time I offer some positive and constructive feedback on a variety of packages so that you can decide which bundles to pick up during the next sale. So without further ado, please enjoy my humble observations on a random selection of tables from the new Pinball FX.
Alright, now we can concentrate on the job.
Sky Pirates revolves around intercepting commercial air carriers and grabbing passengers' booty. There are 5 main modes that are clearly marked and easily embarked upon by completing the ramps, orbits, or locking 3 balls after opening the cannon by the cross shot. There's a drone that flies around and occasionally blocks my view, which only adds to the excitement by raising my blood pressure. The wizard mode is good fun and relatively accessible and proves that Zen Studios is still capable of hijacking my attention. You can collect coins to make purchases in the shop that nobody can read because the writing is too small. And there's a shooting gallery which is permanently set to super casual.
Wasn't even that hard.
You can rotate the battleship with the flippers and fire cannonballs with the launch button, and a cooldown indicator hiding on the display that could have been on the boat. But I guess Captain Obvious wasn't able to attend the Sky Pirates meeting that week.
Look at these movies. You just want to fire them all the time.
Pinball Noir features a spiral bullet chamber where you're encouraged to knock off targets while locking ammo for multi-ball. Some of the missions are actual game modes, while others require you to make precision shots, like double-crossing the crooked cop or teabagging the prostitute.
Thank you, my lovely.
The mini-games take a hot minute to figure out, so make sure you're watching the apartments in the back after hitting a jackpot if you want to score the window shot later on. The magnets should be engaged ahead of the speeding vehicle to pull it forward during the car chase, and there's a magna save that can be activated with the launch button that everyone forgets about. Everything on Pinball Noir seems like it could be recreated in the physical realm, which is why some users run into issues like frame drops and latency. So make sure that your rig is powerful enough to handle the minimum requirements for an authentic real-life experience. Curse of the Mummy will have you screaming obscenities as you try to complete 10 different modes that aren't displayed on the table. Some players might choose to beat Oasis Rush or light the torches first, but I like to prioritize Mummy Multi-Ball by locking 3 balls in the top right mini field. Most of the modes can overlap, which means they can be completed while others are activated, but this could potentially impede your progress by blocking lanes, creating additional distractions, or screwing up the display. I even had the video mode start during a multi-ball, so it's all about finding the right synergy. This table would have been better if you could complete any 10 modes instead of each one, considering you need to hold both flippers for a status report, and even then you need to use some deductive reasoning to keep track of what's left. Years after release, Curse of the Money is still full of bugs and glitches. Pasha is like playing a poor man's Arabian Nights. There's an exciting cross shot that's fun to practice while holding up the right flipper to reach the palace lane. But you'll first need to nail one between the bumpers in order to open up the Book of Tales before attempting one of the 3 main missions. The Palace Guard is a straightforward fight to the top of the mini playfield, and the magic carpet requires no flight training whatsoever. But the magnetic merry-go-round might make you rage. So start with the left flipper and stay ahead of the ball. The swindler running a side hustle at the bazaar has no skills, so watch the cups and take his money. There's plenty of multi-ball by locking them up the middle, and you can earn extra balls by completing the caravan 3 times, which also scores big points. Pasha is a table for anyone who enjoys incessantly knocking balls around while being patronized by a 12-year-old girl.
Treasure found!
The object of Biolab is to upgrade 4 parts of the aborted fetus before disposing it into the sewer. The missions can be activated by hitting the 3-layer target bank, and include navigating a rotational maze, making magnetic skill shots, and meticulous muscle memory. After completing each main task, the player is punished by having to complete a 4-part, single-ball setback that requires making shots under duress of a giant magnet in the middle of the table. Fortunately, there are several other ways to rack up a proper score other than the primary events. Completing a 5-way combo, maxing out during the reflex upgrade, or completing the flux wheel starts flux frenzy. But you're better off filling the pressure gauge and locking balls up the right ramp to start clone multi-ball if you want to see some action. Biolab's playfield is very conducive to multiple ball play, but there's an abundance of security features to prevent any leaks. Secrets of the Deep has you seeking out 4 different multi-ball quests while pissing opportunities down the drain. The crane game takes a while getting used to, and that's putting it kindly, which I thought would receive a modernization along with the cameras, most of which are absolutely abysmal when it comes to viewing the upper playfield. This table played better in VR, which would be a cool update down the road, so let's hope it happens. But for now, you're stuck with guessing whether or not you're completing the shark attack targets, or how to reliably land the ball on the stool samples, while stacking Magna saves that like to trip out. The extreme rumble that violently shakes your home during mine chaos is a welcome kick in the pacemaker, and there's enough here to keep exploring the different features, but I just wish I could find a better angle. And fire the crane operator for criminal negligence.
Watch out!
Rome is another visually impaired table that's great for inducing cataracts. The main goal is to complete 6 garrisons, which can be started by hitting the ramps to spell Conqueror, followed by a shot down the center sinkhole. Each of the missions are equally unremarkable as they are forgettable, along with the wizard mode, which is basically peasant multi-ball. You don't need to complete each quest, but any combination of them 6 times, so just choose whatever you find easiest. Kickbacks and ball saves are easy to enable, the latter by hitting the bumpers 24 times to spell scrotum. The woman providing the voiceover sounds like she's trapped in a box.
Take heart, the gods are with you.
Which explains her level of enthusiasm and lack of Roman accent. I thought the new installment of Pinball FX would address these issues and give the old tables some fresh polish, but as of right now, the sound balance across the entire platform needs to be improved.
What is it that makes a great soldier?
Brothers in Arms mixes flowery language with casual swearing across 5 combat operations. 3 of the missions are pretty much the same, bringing out a multi-ball that requires 12 shots while being hollered at by Hitler. Air Raid asks for a quick series of shots and is more fun when you lose and the table starts shaking, kind of like the Panzer Tank multi-ball. And then there's Infiltration, which punishes you for making the wrong lane by following up in the mission sinkhole to watch your brother get laid to rest by friendly fire. You can light letters to raise the timer or jackpots and increase your ammo with supplies from the left drop targets, which apparently does something, but I was able to finish each campaign and liberate a town without figuring it out, and carries over until you reach the 5th and final battle, which are all the same wizard mode parade that will have you celebrating before the bodies are cold. The main objective of Borderlands is to enter the pause menu and lower the voices so you don't have to listen to the loud, cringe robot the whole time. After disabling the primary distraction, you can shoot both ramps to summon the Psycho for combat. Bust one of his kneecaps to enable a lock up the right. Locking at least 3 balls lets you start a boss fight, where you need to knock down the center drop targets to score jackpots in the chest. These are added to the super jackpots that can be collected by shooting the bonus targets or bumpers on the upper playfield, and fulfills the mission's requirements. Collecting 10 pieces of loot from the chests allows you to choose a legendary weapon, which can be turned off with the launch button and saved for later if you're struggling with multi-ball. The player's experience level determines the value of the drop targets, which can be raised by hitting the left orbit spinner and are generally worth ignoring.
Perfect! And away we go!
The primary objective of Homeworld is to avoid completing the salvage ramp, so you don't have to deal with all the green and red squares distracting you from the main mission, which is to complete each of the 5 quests that can be selected after building the spacecraft in the middle. The goals range from your typical lit lanes to random obstructions that need to be eliminated, and a pretty satisfying space shooter that comes from the opposite side of the table. There's 2 multi-balls that can be activated by locking them in the launch ramp and carrier sinkhole, which is pretty much necessary if you want to avoid falling asleep during the main quest line. The steady ambiance is a nice escape from the ups and downs found on most other tables. so it can be a pretty chilled experience if you can overcome the interference from asteroids and a UI designer gone rogue.
On my way.
The object of Whirlwind is to enforce martial law after bungling a cloud seeding operation.
Incoming! Return to your homes!
You can light the ball lock by hitting the 8 directional arrows scattered throughout the table, which will start rotating the discs on the playfield and initialize the fan on the back glass, blowing dust particles and dead skin cells from other patrons into your nose hole. The supercellar door can be lit by making the cross shot, or temporarily lit by coming across the right rollover. There are 7 awards per ball that can be collected here, and can also be made to restart multi-ball if you only got 1 left. Whirlwind is definitely an expert table, and will require advanced skills like live catches, post-passing, and clever use of the stopper to keep your balls bouncing along. But getting good against the gale will make other tables feel like a breeze. Bride of Pinbot was ahead of its time, built around the theme of mail-order sex dolls. You can start by stiffing one up the rocket ship ramp and slipping one of your balls into her mouth, followed by 2 more in the eye sockets. The bride would be much more unforgiving if it weren't for Zen's updated physics, so make sure you know how to tap pass so you can lock 2 balls at the same time, which begins the metamorphosis and a chance at the big wheel, where you can light the $1 billion shot if you're lucky. You can also perform a backdoor billion by pulling out a 10-loop combo, or lighting all 4 extra ball lamps on the return lanes. These are by far the biggest ways to score, so make them your main focus, and don't go blowing your load on unnecessary shots, unless of course you just feel like dicking around, which is totally acceptable given how flowy the machine is. Swords of Fury begins with a poke up the shaft that has nowhere else to go but across the upper rail and onto the mini playfield. The only real goal is to lock 3 balls in the left pocket to begin a multi-ball, which is also how you relight the kickbacks and briefly lights the center ramp for a Lion Man bonus. The Avenger targets pretty much light themselves with normal play, and every 4th completion adds an extra ball. The magic value can be scored by completing all 5 drop targets on the mini playfield, or simply by shooting the lit target if multi-ball is active. The pen is mightier than the sword, and Swords of Fury seems to run out of ink pretty fast, so use it as an excuse to practice catching and transferring, and be mindful of the center post to counter any castrations. The best thing about Swords is that it hopefully bumps other Williams tables up the development roadmap, like Taxi and Tomcat. Remember when the demons in your head told you not to touch the door, but you went ahead and did so anyway? The Twilight Zone is chock full of references from the classic TV series, twined together into an elaborate tapestry of inexplicable fortuity and random giggles. The main missions correspond to the 14 different panels on the perimeter of the door. They can be activated by making the piano shot from the upper left flipper, sinking the ball into the slot machine scoop, or completing the Illuminati pyramid on the mini playfield. Most of the events are 20-second madness modes, while others light up lanes and targets for big points. Each shot into the gumball machine has a chance to release the ceramic ball for some kid to choke on, which can be locked to start Powerball Mania for valuable scoring opportunities, making Twilight Zone one of the best tables that boomers can brag about actually understanding. World War Z takes place in a shopping mall during a massive menstrual cycle. Shooting the main mode ramp 3 times activates one of the 5 objectives, which includes subduing rioters and taking down Black Friday shoppers. There's also a chainsaw mini playfield that feels a bit haphazard, and sometimes the auto launch will toss the ball into the outlane during the lurker multi-ball battle. Fortunately, missions only end if the squad's health is reduced to 0, so they can be continued between balls. And each completed mission awards a weapon that deals more damage towards bosses, so begin by playing the better guns and vantage point missions first. Lighting kickbacks by hitting the drugstore on the left 3 times is necessary if you plan on staying long, as World War Z requires you to stock up on vitamins and nutraceuticals when facing the risk of a staph infection. Star Wars Rebels is what happens when they hire a fan fiction writer to expand the franchise.
See your, painting.
Modes can be selected by hitting the U-turn ramp, with the number of required shots incrementing for each fully attempted mission, and resetting after a ball drain. The missions don't need to be completed to progress as long as the ball is kept in play, so it's fairly easy to reach the wizard mode with some extra balls and kickbacks, ideally through the Graffiti Award. There's a lot of fun side modes like the TIE Fighters and multiple multi-balls and plenty of different shots to make no matter which flipper you're on. I recommend lowering or muting the voices if you want to get the most out of Rebels.
What part of Blast Them did you not understand?
Voice tracks should be brief and only used for callouts, not incessant rambling or repeating the same lines over and over again.
Get those crates aboard ship, now!
Next time they make a move, we'll be waiting for them to snuff out that spark before it catches fire.
Rogue One starts off pretty simple and elegant, which is a nice change of pace from the extra complexity of most Star Wars tables, but quickly devolves into rage as you get bottlenecked by the linear mission progression. The first scene is centered around a drop target that won't go away, followed by a battle with an Imperial merry-go-round.
There isn't much time.
Most of the 10 chapters can be completed in a few hits, but if any of the cross shots start giving you trouble, it's back to lighting the solar panels on the dashboard to restart the scene. And be careful you don't accidentally restart a previous mission because it plays again but even harder. If you ever reach the wizard mode, the janitor blocks your view by bringing up a terminal to write comments about her latest table purchases.
Marvelous.
Rogue One Star features almost no multi-ball if you just follow the main quest, so aim for the orbits to induce some multi-ball shrinkage.
Next time, it will be harder.
Might of the First Order commences with a cinematic of a flamethrower, which is always a good sign. You can prime the weapon by hitting the 2 targets on either side of the cross shot before making it up the left ramp to burn your ball for double points on major shots. White Hot is just one of the 9 objectives you need to check off in order to rule the universe. Other highlights include Frontiers and Crushing Multiball, which can have you smashing shots on both the inner and outer playfields for an incredibly surreal effect. The hardest mission is probably the ability test, which needs to be activated by making the cross ramp 5 times to spell drill. This can be reached by either the central saucer or failing to make it up the spiral ramp. The much appreciated non-linear quest line and impressive inside-out multi-balls are 2 of the biggest reasons to keep returning to the chaos on Might of the First Order. The Force Awakens is what happens when your teenage daughter brings home a middle-aged black guy.
What's your hurry, thief?
Missions include collecting pieces of scrap metal, preventing a snowman from being captured by a net, and making a smooth getaway. There are 12 scenes in total, which can be started by nailing the left ramp thrice, and most of them are completed after the timer runs out, while making some high-scoring shots in the interim. It's a real test of endurance because even if you focus strictly on progression, you'll still be sidetracked by battling Kylo Ren, or getting accosted by giant teeth-bearing genitalia. Make sure to keep an eye out for extra balls at the right orbit, and remember to start Jakku Multiball by holding the right flipper after an inner left orbit shot, before beginning a tricky scene so that you can escape before being taken to the dark side. E.T. is great for cross-shotters and fans of the 1982 extraterrestrial romance movie, but might weigh down heavy cradlers due to the side flippers closing off the orbits. There are 6 main modes that can be selected from the spaceship, most of which are pretty solid, except for Elliot's busted bike riding, where you hop over landmines with a 4-second input delay. There's another mission where you need to collect unmarked candy since the Reese's Pieces expired. If you fail a stage, simply shoot the leftmost lane after the mission ends to receive credit, but don't forget to phone home by completing the rollovers 5 times and collecting the parts, or else you won't reach the wizard mode. Despite some shortcomings, E.T. is an accessible table, and his voice still sounds drunk and authentic. But Elliot sounds like his testicles were removed.
Come on, help me!
Which deviates from the original story, unless there's a reboot I'm unaware of. Back to the Future begins with you choosing one of 6 time periods that determines whose bloodline you'll ruin first. Each era has 3 different counters that must be completed, which are clearly displayed on the dashboard and marked by the arrows on the playfield. There are no time limits when it comes to completing tasks, so there's always a sense of progression and achievement. Finishing each time period in a single credit will require a bit of endurance, but the stacking multi-balls allow you to finish some of these events just by keeping your balls up, and there's plenty of extras that can be picked up by hitting the plutonium target hiding on the right. Back to the Future is total chaos wrapped in clear guidance, with the flexibility to play in any order you wish, making this one of the easiest to recommend tables, brimming with nostalgia for a time when cultural misnomers didn't offend anybody.
Indians!
Remember when the intelligence agencies ghost-funded a movie about shark attacks so they could scare people away from the beach? Jaws presents two different sets of challenges that must be tackled simultaneously if you want to see the true wizard mode. Quint's missions are activated by making the lanes, while Jaws is unlocked by lighting the rollovers and slipping it in the left sinker. Hitting the bumpers will start rotating the table, which doesn't necessarily make it more difficult, but may make you seasick. The outlanes are a bit hungry, unlike Jaws himself, who rarely makes an appearance. But the most perplexing thing is the open playfield and lack of multi-ball. Even the two fake finales from completing each quest line are suspiciously absent from action. Sure, you can lock 3 balls in the gimp cage, or try hitting the shark fin 20 times, but you'll really only want to focus on prepping the Jaws sinkhole for Quint's misadventure if you want to score big. South Park is very involving with a ton of quests, most of which are multifaceted, and 9 of them you need to complete in order to reach the finale. Missions can be activated at the same time, so look for synergy and stacking wherever possible, such as setting up the school bus multi-ball before working on Cartman's anal probe. Some goals can be continued after reactivating, such as killing Kenny and Chef's booty calls. There's a mini playfield where the ball can turn into a balloon, or locked into the toilet for multi-fecal matter. And this only begins to scratch the surface of Super Sweet Pinball, which is suitable for all ages since there is no explicit language, and might come as a surprise to any fans of the show expecting something edgy. Most of the references are from the early seasons, and it makes me wish they didn't kill off the bus driver. Who's your favorite ancillary South Park character? Start a dialogue in the comment section.
I don't know if I can take this guy, Sharon.
Butters provides a more casual and easygoing South Park pinball experience, replete with school bullying and child abuse. Missions are readily activated by hitting the ball into the whirlpool, usually from the side flipper after dropping out of the kicker. There's 5 quests to choose that include multi-balls, lane chasers, and a second field. Successfully unlocking each of Butters' alter egos starts a trip to Imagination Land. If that isn't enough, there are plenty of other ways to start trouble, like joining a biker gang multi-ball, or throwing ninja stars at the fellas, which adds a collectible to the jackpot scored during wizard mode. Extra balls can be earned by changing into 3 different outfits, scoring 100 movie ideas through Awesome-O, maxing out the multiplier, receiving a gift from Lexus on the right push target, or getting grounded 50 times.
Grounded, mister! You're grounded!
My Little Pony is an easy and accessible table designed for children and cosplayers of all ages. The flowy nature and easy-to-grasp goals are a welcome change from the hyper-complex tables Zen likes to put out. There are 5 time modes that can be started by making different lanes that conclude with a wizard multi-ball, as you would expect. You can also make the cross shot 6 times to start Elements of Harmony multi-ball. But the key to earning a high score is to go into the sound settings and turn off the voices.
Oh, so that's how it works.
It's only then that the table becomes playable and takes on a new life of its own, through the relaxing and trippy visuals. Fans of the series who appreciate the wretchedness of the callouts also seem to express disappointment, as not all of the ponies' voices were included, with most of these complaints coming from middle-aged men. After sinking hundreds of hours into playing, capturing, and editing the new Pinball FX, I'm happy to report that this is indeed an improvement over its predecessor. The biggest selling point for me is the new physics, as there are several flipper maneuvers that couldn't be executed on the previous game, which brings a whole new dimension to many of the tables. So definitely keep an eye out for sales, and pick up the legacy bundles if possible, and remember that discounts stack. And don't forget to blast this video around the internet if you want to see more hot takes and dead flips moving forward.